Welcome to Biz Alchemy, a podcast about creating a new business paradigm by women, for women. I'm your alchemical host, Jacqueline Atkins, and I'm going to take you on an extraordinary adventure to create a business filled with ease, fun, spaciousness, and abundance. Hustle, be gone. Let's birth a new way. Lovely to have you back. And how are you faring after that full moon lunar eclipse that we've just had? Oh my gosh. In fact, I know there's always a build up to an eclipse and we've been in the middle of eclipses, but the last week I have really felt it, like not in a negative way. I don't even know how to explain it, but I was definitely receiving upgrades, shall we say. And I'll actually dip into that a little bit today. So today's topic is about you, but it's also about me. So we're going to talk a bit about both. But one thing I just want to make clear before I launch into today's topic, well, it's an introduction into today's topic, is let's start with one simple truth. You are not your modalities or your toolbox. So in my newsletter last week, if you received my newsletter, you would have had a little introduction to this. If you don't receive my newsletter, get on my list now, jacquelineatkins.com/newsletter, because then you get even more bonus information from me because I write extra things in my newsletter. So I'm going to expand on last week's newsletter topic, which I called, Do You Hide Behind Your Tools and Title? Now, I did have quite a bit of feedback regarding this newsletter. It did strike a note with some of my readers. So today I'm going to touch on that a little bit, but then also go off on another tangent. Now, even though I've called this Is Your About Me About You, obviously the About Me is referring to a website page, which many people call the About Me. If you don't have a website, that is fine because there will be somewhere that you have a bio. So in your social media, whether it's on maybe a booking link people use for you, somewhere you are going to have some information about who you are. So what I'm interested to know is, does that bio or About Me page, if I read it, would it give me a chance to feel your energy, to feel who you are? Or does it tell me every course you've done since 1990? It's a little boring when that happens. And frankly, I don't care. If I am reading someone's About Me page and it is listing all the courses or the accreditations that they have got in the last 20 years, I just switch off. It's just so not why I'm there. It is not why I am reading that page. I don't care. I've got to be honest, qualifications don't mean anything to me. Okay, if I was seeing an accountant, I would like the fact that they were a qualified accountant. But as I talked about in my newsletter, that really comes from their old paradigm occupations. And since I'm talking about a new paradigm of business, I'm imagining most people listening to me are in new paradigm. Well, they're not even occupations, are they? It's just you. It's you showing up, being you, and sharing your gifts. So I don't care about the piece of paper. Half the time, those modalities, I don't even know what they are anyway. But I want to know, do you speak to me? Can I connect with your heart when I read about you? And I'm always fascinated to know what led you to this place. What led you to share these gifts? Don't you love that? Don't you love hearing people's story? Story is what connects us. That's why I show up here every week and tell you stories and have guests who tell you stories. Stories connect us. So when I'm reading someone's bio or someone's About Me page, I want their story. What's inspired you? Oh, I just love knowing that. And that connects my heart with your heart. And that's what helps me know, as in an inner knowing, whether I want to continue our relationship or not. So I'm going to share a story with you today, which actually tells you a little more about me And it also is an illustration of this process. Although interestingly, I didn't go searching in this case. It came to me, which I think tends to be how I end up working with people anyway. I received a birthday present from a friend who has known me for at least 15 years. And when we first connected, I was immersed, shall we say, considerably in my woo. I will call it that. I was really exploring my spirituality, my spiritual gifts. And I'd been on a journey at that point for about 5 years, I suppose, focusing on a particular direction, which I'll talk about in a moment. Anyway, she gifted me for my birthday the Rose Oracle, a deck of oracle cards by Rebecca Campbell. As I opened them and saw them, and I was like, oh, and it took me right back to where I was at the time we met. And she said to me, remember you were so immersed in your work around the Sisterhood of the Rose? And I went, oh my gosh. And like, it's something I remember, but it's not really something I've revisited. I was fully immersed in it. And I couldn't remember how that started, but I was writing a book, which I had called The Rosa Line. It was about the lineage of the rose, and it was a channeled book. And I was connecting in with different women throughout history, some known, some not. They'd been eliminated from our history. And I was channeling their story. And so a couple of well-known ones one was Joan of Arc and one was Nefertiti. But each was represented by a different color rose, and that color rose held their energy. So I was bringing through the story of the rose and that color and how it came to be on Earth. And then I was also telling the story of that particular woman and how she was activating the earth, what codes she was activating in the earth. So I was fully immersed on this. I remember I used to walk on the beach, so even back then, and I didn't have a phone to record into in those days, but I had like a little dictaphone I would take with me on the beach and I would record as I was walking. And so the story would just come through me. And then I'd go home and type it up. Well, no, I did have a computer then. I didn't type. I wasn't like typewriter days. I did have a computer to load it up onto. So anyway, my friend gave me this beautiful rose oracle. And when I got home that evening and it was on my actual birthday, and I pulled it out, and each card was revealing another part of myself, helping me to remember this time. But it's amazing, in that length of time, it's amazing what you forget. And I knew I'd thrown out the books. I remember throwing them out a few years ago where I'd written a lot of my stuff. But what I had done is I still had a lot of my computer notes, and certain things I'd written in those books, I had scanned and uploaded to my computer. So I knew it was on my computer. I just haven't looked at it for a very long time. And every time I change computers, I've carried it over, but I've just never looked at it. So I'm opening these cards. I'm like, I'm going to have a look. Let me just go onto my computer and see what I can find. I can't even remember why I started writing this story. And the first thing I opened up was a journal entry that I'd obviously written and then scanned to keep. And it was actually about the only modality I ever learned was pranic healing. And I knew it was around 22 years ago, but I could never remember whether I learnt that after my son was born, and he's 24 now, or after my first daughter, Heidi, was born, and she's 22. But I knew it was around that time. Anyway, the first entry I opened up, I was pregnant with Grace, my third child, and I'd gone to learn the pranic healing. I'd gone that weekend. So I described it, and I said because I was pregnant, the teacher didn't want anyone else working on me. So she actually was doing the work with me. So in that, it was a bit of a bonus because she channeled through some information for me. And she said to me, you understand the truth of the rose and the lineage and the different colors and what they represent, something along those lines. I had completely forgotten this. Would you believe that was the first page I opened up, that memory? I mean, one, I'd forgotten that I was actually pregnant at the time, and it was actually my third child, whereas I always thought it was my first or second when I did this training. And that message came through. So then I started to read through a little bit more and get a feel. And basically what unfolded is over the next couple of years, I started to tap into this a little bit more. Not long after doing that course, we actually moved up to Byron Bay, where I currently live, or the area anyway of Byron Shire. And so I started to channel this information. Then we ended up having to go to Perth to live for 8 months. And in that time, because Perth had so many roses, where I live here in Byron, it's too humid. They don't grow very well. And Perth had so many roses, and there were lots of rose gardens around where I was in the hills. I used to go and sit with the different color roses and bring through the energy and bring through the story. And so I've had all that recorded. And then it was when I returned to Byron that I started to do the beach walking and bringing through the energy of these different women as well. So I was fully immersed in this. My kids were babies. I mean, they were sort of, I had 3, 4 and under. So it wasn't a full-time thing because obviously I was quite busy, but I played with it for a few years. And it was also after returning to Byron from Perth that I really started to move more into my sound healing, playing around with that. And, I wasn't playing around. I mean, I was offering sessions. And then as I was doing that, I began to trust more in my clairvoyance, because the more I was sounding, it was clearing my clairvoyance, my clairaudience. So that was unfolding at this time as well. And I think opening myself to the book coming through was also helping with that. So this was such a big part of my journey, the rose energy and the sound healing. And the rose journey eventually led me into my interest in Mary Magdalene and her story. Well, the woman, or that we know as Mary Magdalene, but also the energy that is the Magdalene now. And that energy became a very big part of my life, a really strong guiding influence, and as part of the Rosa line, as is Mother Mary. So I really dived into exploring her energy and studying a lot of history of that time. I read so many books to do with the esoteric interpretation of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. I dived into all the Templar and Cathar information from France in particular. And then that's what eventually led me in 2007 to going to France to organize a group to take over there to the sacred sites that were to do with the Rose line and particularly with Mary Magdalene. So that sort of all led into that. And I did those journeys. I didn't do a lot. I ended up doing 4 journeys over about a 7-year period. But it was very, very powerful for me. And it was on it was on the Recce, the original journey I did for that is actually where I met Mark, my partner, who was also very much into all of that I was into at the time. And we met in southern France in a place called Rennes-le-Château. And if I go through my photos of that time, I've just got roses. I've got so many photos of roses in France, and very often to do with some of these sites I was going to, there was a rose in front and I was capturing that. And I even remember going to a vineyard once because I was doing some other work over there as well in France, and going to a vineyard near Bordeaux. It was actually called the Magdalene, and because often over there at the vines, they have a rose bush at the end. And so I've actually even got this photo of the vineyard and the roses and the name of the vineyard in the back. So it was very much a part of who I was. But, life moves on. And without going into a whole lot of detail, there was a point where I had to actually start making money. I wasn't making money doing what I was doing. A little bit, but not enough to survive. That's around the time when I started to look at going back into physiotherapy to be able to earn a regular income. And as I did that, I left all this behind. I left the rose behind. I left the tours behind, even the sound. I left all of that behind. It was to be another 7 or 8 years before I returned and studied life coaching and then remembered about my energy work. I had played a little bit with it over that time, and I'd run meditations occasionally, and so I hadn't completely abandoned it, but it certainly wasn't my focus. So it's only been in the last 5 years that I've really moved back into this, but I haven't gone back to the rose until these cards arrived. So this last week has actually really cracked open something in me. Last week when I was on a call with the Biz Alchemy Playground ladies, and I was telling them this, a short version of this, and one of the ladies said to me, will you go back to writing the book? But I can't, because it's exactly that. It's going back to it, and it's not where I am now. It's not who I am now, but I know that I am stepping into, I guess I could say, the priestess energy that embodied, I just got all over body chills as I said that embodied this lineage of the rose. Now, you know what? I've just gone into that whole story I've completely gone on a tangent from what I was going to tell you, which was about, I hope you enjoyed it anyway. There's a bit more about me, but it was about the fact that when I opened those cards and saw it, I think in there, Rebecca, who created the cards, tells her story. It was a story that resonated a lot with me. She's Australian. She now lives in Glastonbury. And the way she described her relationship with Mother Earth and with the roses, I felt like she was an aspect of me. It felt like she was sharing exactly what I experienced 15 to 20 years ago on that journey. And she's experienced it more recently in the last decade, I think. But reading her story was just like, oh, yeah, that's me. That's me. And what it made me do is email her, because I just had to say thank you. I had to say thank you for opening this in me again. And I gave a really brief little history, very brief, couple of paragraphs. But I just wanted to thank her for being herself, for being authentic, for sharing her journey. And, I sent the email. I didn't get a response from her. I got a response from her team just going, oh, thank you. That's really lovely. But that was okay, because I didn't do it to get a response. I just wanted to acknowledge her truth. So that really touched me. I went onto her website and I looked at what she does. And although there's nothing that's really grabbing me at the moment, she's working through Hay House. So it didn't feel quite right for me. But I know there's something there. And maybe one day I will get a card reading with her, or I will she does have a workshop in June. So there might be something there. But the reason I wanted to share this story with you was not only to reveal a bit more about myself that you may not know, but also to share that when someone is authentic, when they tell their tale, what brought them to where they are now, if you feel in your heart, oh my God, I feel such a connection to you. I feel like I understand you. I feel like our paths were meant to cross in this way. When you feel that, that's when you get the right clients. That's when you get the customers who love you. And so your About Me page, your bio, is a chance to capture that. And when I look at my About Me page now, I wrote that probably 3 to 4 years ago. And it's on my mind always, I must go back and change my About Me page. But whenever I go back and I look at it, I sort of feel like, well, that's all still true. And it was very much focused on me moving into speaking my truth and being my authentic self. And that's what I support my clients to do. And when I read it, I feel like, well, that is me. Like, that is what I am still doing. And so I end up not changing it. But I think there is more to add because I have obviously evolved in the last 3 to 4 years. And maybe I've been holding off because this next piece that's dropping in for me now is a vital part of that. So where is this taking me? I don't know. I know that part of the reason for beginning my Patreon membership was to allow me a space to bring through my priestess energies, if you like, outside of the business sphere. I wanted to be able to play outside of the business focus. And that's what the receiving channel is. But now this next piece has dropped in. It feels like, oh my gosh, there's even more. There's a lot more to this. And I don't know yet what that is. When I hold my solstice retreat, my mini retreat that I have every equinox and solstice, I feel like I will bring through more of this energy. It will be a little bit different to how I've done it before. I'm going to allow myself to embody my priestess more and play around with it, and maybe play around and bring the rose energy in. I don't know. I'm just exploring this as I talk with you. But the other thing that's come to me, and I've been contemplating the last few weeks, is actually holding a day, a sacred day, in-person day here in Byron Bay where I live, for women to come who want to be immersed in this sacred energy. And again, I wasn't sure what the focus of this would be. Would it be about business? Maybe, but I feel like it's going to give me a chance to really move into this and hold the space that I'm being asked to hold for the women who attend, to really, I don't know. I was about to start exploring it. I don't know what it is yet, but I feel it's there. I'm actually feeling quite teary as I talk about it. So there's definitely something expanding in me, something breaking through. Now, before I finish, I want to share with you, I did just draw a card for you before I started recording the podcast. I said, okay, for all my beautiful, beautiful tribe who listen to my podcasts and are listening to this episode, what is it that you want to tell them about their About Me page, about showing up and sharing who they are? And the card is Whispers of Mother Earth. And the themes of that are creativity, ideas, inspiration, artist, writer, channel. So harness that, because I know you have that in you, and bring that through on your About Me page, and attract in that magnificent tribe who at a soul level have agreed to connect in with you this lifetime so you can activate each other. Thank you for listening to me talk about me. Until next time, have an alchemical week in your biz. Thanks for listening to Biz Alchemy. I'm Jacqueline Atkins. If you'd love to know more about the energy of business, join my newsletter list at jacquelineatkins.com and check out my receiving channel on Patreon at patreon.com/Jacqueline Atkins. Until next time, enjoy creating alchemy in your biz.